Picture this, it's 1943. In a dimly lit workshop in Birmingham, England, a meticulous craftsman applies the finishing touches to what appears to be an ordinary cigarette lighter. Across London, an SOE agent prepares to infiltrate Nazi-occupied France with this same lighter concealed in his jacket pocket. And in a clandestine training facility in the Scottish Highlands, operatives practice drawing, aiming, and firing a lethal shot from what their instructors call the last resort. These inconspicuous weapons defined covert operations during World War II. They were everywhere, from resistance safe houses in Paris to intelligence gatherings in Oslo, from British special operatives to resistance fighters. The cigarette lighter gun was the icon of clandestine warfare in the mid-20th century, deadly yet disguised in plain sight. Yet, if you look at concealed weapons today, you'll notice something strange. The cigarette lighter gun has almost completely vanished, replaced by modern technological alternatives. So, what happened? Why did intelligence agencies abandon a concealed weapon that dominated covert operations for decades? And what does that evolution say about how espionage itself has changed? The development of the cigarette lighter gun emerged from the desperate circumstances of World War II, when Britain found itself fighting not just on conventional battlefields, but in the shadows of occupied Europe. The Special Operations Executive, SOE, formed in July 1940 under the direction of Minister of Economic Warfare Hugh Dalton, was tasked by Winston Churchill to set Europe ablaze through sabotage and subversion. This clandestine organization quickly recognized that their agents would need weapons that could be carried undetected past German checkpoints. Traditional firearms were too bulky, too noisy, and too obvious. SOE operatives needed something that could pass casual inspection, yet provide protection in extreme circumstances. The solution would come from Section 9 of SOE, the technical research branch responsible for developing specialized equipment. This small team of inventors, engineers, and craftsmen worked tirelessly in requisitioned facilities to create gadgets that would give British agents a fighting chance behind enemy lines. Among their most ingenious creations was a single-shot firearm disguised as an ordinary cigarette lighter, a weapon so cunningly designed that it could be carried openly, appearing utterly harmless until the moment it was needed. The cigarette lighter gun's design was deceptively simple, yet remarkably effective. From the outside, it perfectly mimicked a standard nickel-plated petrol lighter of the era, the kind found in the pockets of civilians across Europe. It measured approximately 2.5 inches tall by 1.5 inches wide, with the familiar rounded edges and flip-top cap of commercial lighters. The disguise was so convincing that it would actually function as a lighter, producing a flame when operated. Normally, the genius lay in its dual-purpose mechanism. When the cap was flipped open in the conventional manner, it revealed a wick for lighting cigarettes. However, when the base was rotated and the cap opened in a specific sequence, it transformed into a functional firearm capable of firing a single .22 caliber round. The firing mechanism was cleverly integrated into the lighter's body, with the barrel aligned through the center where the flame would normally appear. The trigger was disguised as part of the striker wheel, requiring deliberate manipulation to activate. This attention to detail meant that even if the lighter were handled by someone unfamiliar with its true purpose, it would not accidentally discharge. The production of these clandestine weapons required exceptional craftsmanship and absolute secrecy. Each unit was handmade by skilled gunsmiths working in secure facilities, primarily in Birmingham's industrial quarter. Unlike mass-produced military weapons, these specialized devices were crafted in limited numbers, with estimates suggesting fewer than 400 were ever manufactured. The production process began with high-quality nickel-plated brass casings that would pass for commercial lighters. Inside, precision machined steel components formed the firing pin, barrel, and trigger mechanism. The manufacturing tolerances were incredibly tight. The weapon had to function flawlessly when needed, while maintaining its disguise under close inspection. The .22 caliber round was chosen not for its stopping power, which was modest at best, but for its small size and the fact that it could be fired without excessive noise or recoil. The completed weapons underwent rigorous testing to ensure reliability, with each unit fired multiple times before being reset and prepared for field use. These tests had to be conducted in complete secrecy, as knowledge of such weapons would compromise their effectiveness and endanger the agents who would carry them. The tactical application of the cigarette lighter gun was highly specialized. SOE agents were instructed that this was a weapon of absolute last resort, to be used only in circumstances where they faced immediate capture or death. The effective range was extremely limited, essentially requiring point-blank proximity to the target. Training emphasized that the weapon's primary purpose was to create a momentary advantage that might allow escape, not to engage in extended combat. Agents were taught precise body mechanics for deploying the weapon: how to casually retrieve it from a pocket, how to manipulate it while appearing to simply light a cigarette, and how to aim effectively at extremely close range. The single-shot limitation meant that timing was critical. There would be no second chance if the first shot missed or failed to incapacitate. Documentation from SOE training facilities indicates that agents practiced these movements hundreds of times until they became muscle memory, capable of being executed under extreme stress. Psychological preparation was equally important, as agents needed to understand exactly when deploying such a weapon was justified, given the repercussions that would follow. The cigarette lighter gun entered service in late 1942, primarily assigned to agents operating in Nazi-occupied territories. Security protocols around these weapons were extraordinarily strict. Their existence was classified at the highest level, with knowledge restricted to those with direct operational need. Each weapon was individually numbered and tracked, with agents required to sign specialized receipts acknowledging the grave responsibility that came with carrying such a concealed firearm. The weapons were issued with specific instructions. They were to be carried openly as normal lighters, actually used for lighting cigarettes to maintain the cover, and deployed only in the most extreme circumstances. SOE records, declassified decades later, contain accounts of the weapon's use in the field. One Norwegian resistance operative, whose identity remains protected even in declassified documents, reportedly used the lighter gun to eliminate a Gestapo officer who had discovered his true identity during an impromptu search in Oslo. The weapon's silence and the complete surprise of its deployment allowed the agent to escape and continue his mission. Similar accounts emerged from occupied France and the Netherlands, though many operations involving these weapons remain classified even today. The effectiveness of the cigarette lighter gun relied entirely on its completely ordinary appearance. German security forces were trained to look for hidden weapons during searches, but the lighter's dual functionality provided perfect cover. It could be placed on a table during questioning, held in plain view during inspections, even handed to a suspicious guard who might flip it open, light it, and hand it back without ever suspecting its deadly capability. This psychological dimension was perhaps its greatest strength. The weapon hid in plain sight, exploiting the human tendency to categorize objects based on appearance and expected function. The lighter gun's limitations were equally significant, however. Its single-shot capacity meant it could address only the most immediate threat. The .22 caliber round lacked substantial stopping power, often requiring a precisely placed shot to be effective. The weapon's construction, while ingenious, was still a compromise that could malfunction under adverse conditions. And most critically, if the weapon was used, its very existence was compromised. potentially endangering other agents carrying similar devices. These limitations meant the lighter gun occupied a very specific tactical niche. It was the weapon of absolute last resort, carried when all other options had been exhausted. The post-war period saw the cigarette lighter gun largely withdrawn from active service, though variants remained in specialized inventory through the early Cold War years. As tensions between East and West escalated, intelligence services on both sides developed increasingly sophisticated concealable weapons. The Soviet KGB created their own versions, including the infamous lipstick gun, a single-shot, 22 caliber weapon disguised as a lipstick tube. The CIA developed pen guns, camera guns, and other concealable firearms that built upon the principles established by the lighter gun. By the 1960s, advances in miniaturization allowed for more sophisticated designs with improved reliability and, in some cases, multiple shot capability. The original cigarette lighter guns were gradually phased out, relegated to secure storage facilities, and eventually to intelligence service museums. The concept they pioneered, however, that of the everyday object harboring deadly capability, remained a cornerstone of clandestine operations throughout the Cold War era. The weapon's effectiveness stemmed not just from their mechanical function, but from their psychological impact. The element of complete surprise that could momentarily shift the balance in a life-or-death encounter. The legacy of the cigarette lighter gun extends far beyond its brief operational history. It represents a pivotal moment in the evolution of clandestine warfare, where everyday objects became weapons and the lines between civilian and military technology blurred. Modern concealed weapons used by intelligence services around the world owe their conceptual origins to these improvised devices of the Second World War. The principles established by SOE's technical division, disguise, dual functionality, and psychological advantage continue to influence the design of specialized equipment for covert operations. From a historical perspective, these weapons also reflect the desperate ingenuity that characterized Britain's wartime response. The willingness to explore unconventional approaches when conventional means proved insufficient. The cigarette lighter gun emerged from necessity, but endured as a symbol of human creativity under pressure. Its development required breaking established rules of weapons design, manufacturing, and deployment, resulting in a device that was neither a traditional firearm nor a simple tool, but something that existed in the shadowy space between categories. The cigarette lighter gun also raises profound ethical questions about the nature of covert warfare. Unlike conventional weapons carried openly by uniformed personnel, these disguised firearms deliberately blurred the distinction between combatant and civilian. They were designed specifically to avoid detection, to be carried by individuals who outwardly appeared to be non-combatants. This approached and perhaps crossed boundaries established by international laws of armed conflict, yet they emerged in a context where conventional rules of warfare had already been abandoned by Nazi forces, who routinely executed captured resistance fighters and intelligence operatives without trial. The moral calculus that justified such weapons acknowledged that agents carrying them operated in a domain where traditional protections had disappeared. These ethical dimensions continue to resonate in contemporary discussions about appropriate limits in intelligence operations and asymmetric warfare. The cigarette lighter gun thus serves not only as a historical artifact, but as a starting point for examining the complex ethical landscape of clandestine operations, a landscape that continues to evolve as technology advances and new threats emerge in the 21st century. Today, the few surviving examples of the original British cigarette lighter guns reside primarily in specialized museums and intelligence service historical collections. The Imperial War Museum in London holds several in its restricted collection, occasionally displaying them in special exhibitions on clandestine warfare. Their existence serves as a tangible reminder of a time when ordinary objects could conceal extraordinary capabilities, when survival might depend on the element of surprise and when ingenuity could temporarily overcome overwhelming odds. Modern intelligence services have moved beyond these primitive devices, embracing digital technology, advanced materials, and sophisticated electronics. Yet the fundamental principle established by the cigarette lighter gun, deception through familiar appearance, remains relevant in an age of ever more rigorous security screening. As we reflect on these ingenious devices from a more peaceful vantage point, they remind us of the incredible pressure faced by those who designed, manufactured, and ultimately carried them into some of history's darkest corners. When a disguised lighter might make the difference between life and death, between mission success and failure in humanity's greatest conflict.